What is up, Force fam? Star Wars Dad back for another video. Today we're going to be looking at what I think what I would call my top decks from Jump to Lightspeed. Before we get into today's video, please make sure to check out my Patreon. Big shout out to all my Patreon supporters. And please make sure to like and subscribe. We are already headed towards the 4,000 subscriber giveaway, which I will be giving away 3 Carbonite packs to 3 lucky winners. So I appreciate all the love and support. The channel is really growing. I greatly appreciate it. So the first list, of course, we got to talk about is Han Yellow. I think it gets even better. So we're adding in the new Millennium Falcon in the main, just to have that synergy with the new Han Solo, which helps the stack push even more damage. Commandeer is what I would say the strongest addition to this deck. It just fits what you're trying to do in here so well, and just to be able to play it so easily in this deck to steal your opponent's space units and then waylay. It's just incredibly strong in here. Just continuing to be one of the biggest threats out there. The sideboard is still a work in progress, as you can tell. There's a lot of cards I'm considering. Ahsoka is probably the strongest one of the new cards that I would want to find a way to have it in the main board. You could even consider just taking out the Falcons, the new Falcons completely for that card. Would be my first switch, but I like the synergy it has with the new Han Solo. I like the Boshek card too, because we do play a lot of 3-drops, and then it's a nice way to like draw cards, especially if you're resourcing cards early to try to ramp up. But like I said, that's still a work in progress, figuring the sideboard out. But I think this deck's just going to continue to be one of the strongest decks in the format. There's no reason that it's not going to. Like I said, Commandeer is just an amazing card. So yeah, Jango, of course, is just even nuttier this set. All the indirect damage just puts your opponent in some really, really awkward situations. You see, I've adjusted my list a little bit more to just maximize the use of indirect damage early, because it puts my opponent in weird situations. Like they're going to take a bunch of pressure, or they're going to exhaust their units. Like just, with First Order Stormtrooper or the Starhopper, when it dies, Guerrilla Soldier. So, I mean, Starhopper, for example, can be sneak attacked and then exhaust things. You could even put the droid missile platform in here over the Death Space Skirmisher, which I think is totally fine. I like the Skirmisher myself, just because of the ability to exhaust 2 things in a turn early on in the game, with pinging / using that card if we already have a space unit out. So, but I think the droid missile platform is great as well. But yeah, we're just trying to push damage as quickly as possible. I mean, I think this deck is the aggro killer. Like, it just has such a good matchup against all the aggro decks out there because of its ability to just exhaust everything. The War Juggernaut and the IG-2000 are just absolutely insane in here, to just shut off your opponent's whole side of the board while you continue to push damage. And then, of course, your home run hitter is Devastator. I mean, we already had Fet's Fire Spirit and Ruthless Raider, and Devastator's just insane as well. And then, the additional of cards like Guerrilla Soldier and Starhopper and First Order Stormtrooper and things like that. Once we have a Devastator out, we can just push all that damage to their face with the indirect damage. So this deck's going to be everywhere. I would imagine it's going to... I mean, it's also fairly affordable deck from last set. I think Devastators and Planetary Bombardment are going to make things a little more expensive. I can't remember how much Commandeer is. But Commandeer is another card that's just insane in here that just gives this deck so much more value. But just a very, very strong deck. Next, I think Quinlan. Quinlan got even better. I mean, Ahsoka gives the deck an even better tempo card, just to be able to discard their hand even more while playing a unit, while pinging their units potentially. Jam Communications is another great card. I mean, we're just discarding them nonstop. Force Throw, Jam Communications, the Sparko Rebellions. Ahsoka got her Pillages in the sideboard. Qira to make things more expensive. Just K2SO. I mean, we're just disrupting their hand like crazy. A lot of times we can just beat our opponents while they're hopefully drawing their 1 card a turn that they want to play, and then at that point we're just it's kind of too much for them to overcome, because we're just annihilating their hand while taking over the game. Of course, Han Solo is another great addition to pump up our Falcon and just have another ambush unit on the ground. And I'm using the Gray Squadron and the Red Squadron in my version just as additional ways to activate Tarkintown early and to pump them up with things like Han Solo and Surprise Strike so they get even better, and then Red 5 to kind of clear out those damage units. But I'm sure there's other ways you can play this. You can still use Now. There are 2 of them versions as well. I still think this is going to be one of the best decks around. The hand disruption is just crazy, combined with Tarkintown. It's a very strong deck. Next on the list is the Boba Yellow deck that I just did a video on. I think this deck has a good matchup, against those 3 that I just mentioned. I think aggro is where this deck might have a little more problems, like a Sabine or like a Kazuda. But I still think this deck can hold its own in this particular version that I'm showing here against those more aggressive opponents. That's where I'm trying to get those the TIE Bomber Darth Vader hands with Nabat Village on turn 1 so that I can have a better chance against those decks and actually put them in such an awkward position that I can just run them over. If you're trying to play a deck that's not mirror matches over and over again with Jango and Han and Quinlan, this is one that I would try. I think it's very strong. It's a lot of fun. And I do think it's going to be one of the best decks. I think we'll see this get more and more optimized as the things go on. But I mean, with all the burn spells, I think this has a very favorable control matchup. If control starts to pick up, I would say aggro is the one area where, they could be potentially a little faster than you because of ECL to remove things, and they have their forms of reach as well. So, but yeah, this one's going to be a strong deck. I mean, just being able to play units and put damage on your opponent's base as you're playing units is just very strong. And then the indirect damage puts your opponent in some weird situations. So definitely check out that video if you haven't already. Another, you can really, really push damage too with like a Legion start or a TIE Bomber start, or to follow that up with a Guerrilla Soldier, or a Vader upgrade on the TIE Bomber is another great one against certain matchups. So you can really, really push damage as well in here too. This is the Surprise Strike version. The version right here is using a War Juggernaut instead of Surprise Strike as another triple dark raid and a target to close the game out. This deck does a really great job of closing the game out. Just kind of, very similar to Jango, but we have things like Torpedo Barrage, the Fet's Fire Spray, the Boba Flip onto Fet's Fire Spray is nuts, or Boba Flip onto either one of the Fet's Fire Sprays is nuts. Even the Devastator, if we triple dark raid Devastator. So again, if we triple dark raid a Devastator on 6 resources, we do 5 damage to their base. Then we flip Boba onto Devastator and do 4 damage to their units if we need to finish off some things or some threats. And then we are swinging in for 13 damage. So 13 plus 5 damage is 18 damage to their face in this deck with triple dark raid Devastator. That is insane. So that, can really come out of nowhere and just close the game out. So going to be a very, very strong deck. And I put it up there with the other 3 because I do think it's going to be one of the best. But just, triple dark raid is just nuts right now. Like, that's the card that is just breaking some of these other cards, right? Kazuda. I think it's not my type of deck. It feels more like a glass cannon to me, but I do think that if you if you focus on this deck and really optimize this list, you can make it feel a little bit less like a glass cannon and really find a way to be consistently pushing damage over the top on your opponent. I just think, this deck is very, very fast. Like, you can really just get run over before you can blink. Like, just hitting you for 10 damage on turn 3 with Stolen AT Hauler with a Kazuda attached and a Surprise Strike, or, heroic sacrificing and not losing your units as well as drawing a card is insane. Trench Run is insane under the right circumstances. Like, this deck is just very, very fast. And then on top of that, on the side, like I said, you're using like Jam Communications to kind of disrupt their hand and remove events to slow them down. Contracted Hunter is a good ambush unit. Clear the field's nice against certain matchups. I would consider Spark or Rebellion as well if control picks up more. It's just it's a fun one. It's not my style of deck because I don't feel like it. I don't know. It's just not my not my type of deck, but very, very fast. And I definitely think it's going to be played a ton. Again, you're just using a lot of these cheaper aggro units, and a lot of it's also a cost-effective deck. I think for the most part, I think the AT haulers probably and the Han, I guess, are the most expensive cards. So maybe it's a little bit of price to it, but yeah, this one's going to be everywhere. And we're kind of getting into the aggro decks now. I think those first four are more like, I think they're just the best four decks. I think Kazuda is probably going to be the best aggressive deck now. I think it's going to dethrone Sabine is my guesstimate. Speaking of Sabine, I think Sabine gets even better as well. I think Sabine's Masterpiece is nice. I think the Red Squadron Y-Wing is really nice in here. The upgrades, Luke Skywalker is great in here. It's just, a unit that doesn't go away once it's been upgraded and died. Blue Leader is amazing. Chewbacca is amazing. You're still using Darksaber. Like, this deck's going to be, and everybody's been playing this deck. Maybe they're not going to play it as much at first because they're tired of it. There's other decks that are, equally as competitive for this style of play. But I do think that this deck is going to still be there. Like, it's still a deck that you have to plan for. It's kind of like Jango. You got to test against this deck over and over again, because if you're going to get run over by this deck, then you're going to have a hard time because it's still going to be played a lot. So I do think Kazuda is a little faster, though. This deck is no slouch, and it still has the potential to just run you over. So, like I said, Kazuda feels a little bit more like a glass cannon to me, where Sabine feels like it just keeps hitting you. Because, Poe and Wrecker, right? Like Poe and Wrecker, and even Chewbacca, and K2SO. I mean, K2SO is in Kazuda as well, but that's kind of where things slow down. Like, Plo Koon is definitely strong, but I don't think it's as strong as Poe and Wrecker. So, next aggro deck that I think has a lot of potential, and I think we'll see it played a lot, is Wedge Yellow. This deck can just get off to some really, really fast starts. Again, we're maximizing the use of Nabat Village to really get off to an extremely fast start. And if we're playing against, the right opponent, and they don't have an answer for us, it's going to be hard for them to overcome that. You obviously have to play different against decks like Jango because they're going to be exhausting you. But as far as like running things over, this deck can really run you over fast if you don't have an answer for it. I do think a card like Jam Communications is a card I might want to consider in here. We're still getting the benefit. The upgrades are great in here. Just being able to cheat out the dagger, the Num, the R2 for free onto your ships is really strong. We're playing a lot of cheap ships just to be able to put pressure as quickly as possible. We are playing 3 of each of the Falcons because we want to maximize the upgrade usage in Han Solo as well. And Han Solo is kind of our top end, right? Because we're just low to the ground. Card draw with Eject. Again, we're using Blue Leader, which is a really strong upgrade card as well. Space Ore on the ground. Yes, we're pushing damage with Surprise Strike with Han Solo breaking in the side. Like I said, Jam Communications is a card I might want to consider. I like Force Fire as a sideboard card. But and then Commandeer, of course, for those heavy space matchups. But yeah, I think this one has a lot of potential to be really fast as well. Rebel Assault's another way to push damage in here, and Fleet Lieutenant too. So another good one. Poe ECL, I really like this deck too. I just think we're in a world of Jango. Like, it's a little less effective just because Jango is. I mean, Jango, like all these decks that I'm mentioning right now, like Poe and Wedge and Sabine, Jango just destroys them, right? Like, it shuts them down so easily now that I think that's going to be, if you're playing in a Jango heavy area, like, these decks are going to have a really hard time, in my opinion. Whenever I was playing against these decks, it was just like destroying them. They just couldn't barely get an attack off. And by the time they could, I was so far ahead, there's like nothing they could do. You're winning like 25 to 10 is how those matchups go. You're Tarkintowning and removing their unit early before they're able to upgrade, and then you're just exhausting things over and over again because you're claiming the initiative, and they're just trying to catch up and play defense by that point. It's just too hard, and then you get to like IG, and then and the Death Skirmisher is another card that's been really strong against these decks for me, and then then you're just hitting with War Juggernaut, and it's like, good game. Your whole board's exhausted. What are you gonna do? So, but Poe is another sweet one. I really like this deck. It's a lot of fun. It's a super fun aggro deck to play. Of the aggro decks that are here, this is probably the most fun to play because of the cool tricks you can do with Heroic Sacrifice and Eject with Poe. I've really enjoyed those. I don't think it's as fast as Kazuda, but I do think you can really, again, like you can really come out of nowhere and hit for like 20 damage with, some Poe Heroic Sacrifice plays. Can't speak when it's attached to a space unit, and then then deploy Poe on the 5 resource turn in that same turn, and then swing in for another 4 damage. So there's some really cool things you can do. You're obviously Heroic Sacrificing K2SO is another strong play in here, and then you're still using like Chewbacca, Poe, and Wrecker as your your big home run hitters. So super fun one if you want to play something a little different. I think it's very strong in the right, on the right day. But again, Jango, you got to worry about Jango. So Bane Red, I think Cad Bane gets even better because of IG. I like Dengar a lot because of its underworld synergy as well in here. And then the Sedan Ethano, if I'm pronouncing that right, is just very, very good in here as a piece of removal. I think this one, and then also Death Space Skirmisher because it's all these additional underworld units that are really good. Like I'm playing Death Space Skirmisher and IG in Jango. Dengar I've played in multiple villainy decks, and then the Sedan Ethano is really, really good here to be able to just immediately give something -3/3 on turn 1 as a form of removal in space. And then, of course, we're also using Boba Fett is really cool. It's a strong shielded unit. And then, obviously we're getting tempo with Tarkintown, and we're using Daring Raid and McClunky and our units to just ping things. And then Commandeer. I might want to put Commandeer in the main, but Commandeer, Change of Heart, Waylay to slow things down. No Good to Be Dead as well. So another one I think is going to be played a lot. I think it's just really, really strong. Like now there are 2 of them. Plays are nuts, and you have even more targets now. For now there are 2 of them with Dengar and Boba. So I just think this deck got even better as well. Okay, so now we're kind of getting into the pinging decks. So like Cad Bane is one. Boba Tarkintown I think is going to be a strong deck. I think it does really well against unit heavy decks. The difference between this and the yellow version is that this version is a little more focused on playing defense, and then you're kind of coming back with like K-turn and planetary bombardment to close things out. But you're starting off fast with like First Order Stormtrooper, Allegiant, Bo-Katan, Kai Silencer, and Bomber, basically that whole top row. And then you're setting up your Tarkintowns right away with those units. Against like ECL decks, you're trying to do the TIE Bomber Vader thing if you can, or even TIE Bomber Dengar is really good against those ECL decks, just to put them under so much pressure with indirect damage. You're basically swinging in for 6 indirect damage with the TIE Bomber Dengar, but the TIE Bomber Vader, of course, you're doing 4 indirect damage, giving it a +3/3, and then you're pinging something for 1 and potentially killing it. So, and then it's a really good target to be able to K-turn or aggression. Aggression is where things are really sweet in here because of the upgrade removal, finishing units off, drawing cards, attacking in again. All that stuff is great in here. The Droid Missile Platform is sweet in here as a good defensive card. We're getting the synergy with Fett's Fire Spray and Boba. We're just pinging everything. TIE Dagger we're using to finish off units. Check out my video on this one as well. This deck is really, really sweet. In the sideboard, we're using like a couple shoot down to be able to push damage more, as well as take out space units. A couple open fires we're bringing in if we need to play even more defensively against certain matchups. The Devastator we're bringing in against more mid-range control type matchups, if the longer games that are grindier. But yeah, I think this one's going to be really, really good too. And then the next pinging deck, which is very, very similar to this one, is Vader Tarkintown. They both have their strengths and their weaknesses. I think this one could be a little more aggressive because of being able to push damage to their face with Vader. So every unit in here, I think, is black, has the villainy colors in it so that we can activate Vader when we play it. So we're really able to push damage quickly, and that's why we're playing a lot of 1-drops in here, just to be a little more aggressive. But we can also play defensively as well, again, using the indirect damage. So very similar cards. The TIE Bombers, the Daggers, the Dengars, the Vaders, the IGs, all that stuff we're using. And then our top end is going to be the Ruthless Raiders, the Bombardments, the Devastators. If you haven't tried this one out, you should. This one I saw had some recent success at the end of set 3. And I think it gets even better with all the indirect damage stuff. And we're using a lot of the similar cards to Boba Tarkintown. So, Cad Bane, Boba Tarkintown, and this one, they all kind of do similar things using Tarkintown in different ways. I think Boba and Vader obviously are very similar. But I do think that each of these decks can be really good on the right day. And I think we'll probably see these decks have some success. All right, kind of getting into a different phase of top decks. Qira Green, I think it just doesn't go away. I think it's just a good deck. The changes that I made here were putting in the Onyx as a space unit early to have a way to gain life, and putting in the TIE Dagger because it has really good synergy with Qira's Flip. I may even need to put that up to 3 copies because it's just another way to finish things off that have been damaged by Qira. What else did I change? I think Vanquish was a change. I need to have, I've Felt the Dragon on the side. Devastator might need to be 2 copies on the side for all the space heavy decks. But I mean, the shields are good. You could consider the new Iden card as well to put shields on things. I did consider that, but I didn't want to remove too much life gain. You could take out the Hylobond to put in the Iden, is what I would do if I was going to put that in. But I still like the Hylobond just as a way to play aggressively in a strong ground unit and to have something to damage. Like, I like damaging the Hylobond with Dr. Pershing, for example. Little things like that. But yeah, I mean, I think this one's not going anywhere. You might want to add another copy of Traitorous. I think that might get even stronger this set with all the space units and the upgrades. Just being able to steal them seems like a really good idea. So I might want to put those in the main board, maybe tweak some things around a little bit more. But I do think that this is another deck that will have some success. Bossk Blue, I don't know. I'm going to be honest, I just don't know. When I've tested this out against like the Jango, it already has a not good on yellow matchup. And then if you're testing it out against like Jango and even Boba Yellow, like those decks just push so much damage so fast that it's really hard for Bossk to keep up with that pace. Both of them in different ways. Just triple Dark Raid and Sneak Attack just puts Bossk in really bad situations because you're already kind of like trying to remove their units and hold the initiative. But if they just come in and Sneak Attack or triple Dark Raid and then hit you for 10 damage with War Juggernaut, it's like, well, that didn't help, did it? So I don't know. I don't know if this deck is in a great spot right now. I just wanted to mention it because it's had a lot of success in the last few months, but I don't know. I don't know if and it might need to be that the list needs to be adjusted more for where we're at with things, but I do think I would rather play Qira if I was going to play more of a deck like that with more removal, just because Qira can, Qira's Flip, it can be a lot more significant early on with removing threats and kind of taking over the game. I don't know. Definitely like to hear people's thoughts on some of these decks and what they think. But yeah, I'm not sure about this one. Just wanted to mention it though because it is one of my favorite decks, but I don't know if it's in a great spot at the moment. I do, however, think that Bossk Green gets a little better with the indirect damage synergies that you have. Like Dengar plus a Bounty Hunter's Quarry is obviously one of your best starts in this deck. But then, things like TIE Bomber and even Allegiant, just kind of overwhelming them with indirect damage, puts them in some weird situations, and it makes it a lot easier to finish things off with Dengar's bounty abilities so that you can benefit off that as well as Bossk's pings. And then Darth Vader has been really, really good in here because when you're cheating things out with Bounty Hunter's Quarry, you can immediately find targets for Darth Vader to be an upgraded unit on. And then Darth Vader does a great job of synergizing with Bossk and Dengar to finish things off, as well as the indirect damage. And then like a Darth Vader, even on like a Punishing One, for example, is disgusting in here because of the upgrade synergies that you have, like with the bounties. So you're killing a lot of units, so you're able to like attack in for 6 twice very easily in here with the Punishing One and the Darth Vader. I'm not using resupply in here, and I'm not playing as many expensive payoffs because I've found that being a little more lower to the ground has actually been very effective at closing the game out, even oftentimes by Bossk flip turn in this particular build. But the sideboard I'm still trying to figure out for this one, as I have not gotten a chance to play test this extensively yet. But I would imagine it's going to be some combination of Devastator, Great Dragon, Palpatine, and Palpatine's Return. Maybe a little bit more removal, like the Force Choke in the Open Fire. Maybe a little more life gain with the Colonel Yularen and the Salacious Crumb potentially back in here. But I have kind of really enjoyed where this one has been at. But I do think this one has a better chance, just because of the cheating things out and being able to double ramp Bosk's flip and double draw cards and all the cool things you can do in here with the bounties. So Anakin Blue, I think, gets a little better with Colossus. I think that's the base that's made for Anakin because it allows Anakin to really close the game out fast you're able to take more damage. You're drawing more cards too with the addition of where's it at? Where is it at? There it is on the top row. Red Squadron X-Wing. That allows us to draw more cards. We're using that, Yoda and Obi-Wan, to draw cards, to fill back up our hand, and Kuil. And then, we're still using Jedi Lightsaber and Bravado to just close the game out with Anakin. Playing a little more defensively, I would say, with more hand disruption with Force Throw, Pillage, Kanan, K2SO, and then more of that in the sideboard as well. But yeah, I do think that if I was going to play a hero blue deck, this is probably the one I would play. I've been enjoying it in testing, using Perilous Position and top target and getting this back with Razor Crest, as well as life gain. I didn't add in the Hera or the that other pilot, just because it's not as focused on. You're using your cheap units with Anakin's ability to take things out, so you don't necessarily need the pilots. I don't think, but I could see that using those pilots could still be good. I do like the Hera because of the life gain aspect, just have an additional life gain unit. But yeah, those Jedi lightsaber bravado turns are just nuts because of Colossus. So if you're, let's say your opponent has got you to 30 damage, you can kill a thing, put a Jedi lightsaber on Anakin, so you're swinging in for what is it? Get 1 damage for every 5, right? So 6. So you're swinging in for was it 13? If you're at 30, is that right? With Jedi lightsaber, and then you bravado, swing in for another 13, so you're doing 26 damage. I think that's right. But yeah, you can just really just blow them out of the water on the Anakin flip turn. So I did want to mention this one as far as hero blue decks, and we're going to get into a couple of those. This one has some success from last set. I still think it has potential. Yoda's flip turn is just so good. I'm not sure how it's going to do against Jango, but I mean, Vigilance at 4 costs is just so amazing. Whenever I play these decks, I always forget that Vigilance only costs 4, and it just feels like butter, like slicing butter with a knife when you're playing Vigilance at 4. It's just so amazing, gaining 5 life and removing a unit for 4 resources, and especially in a deck like this where you're getting to 7, 8, 9 resources is kind of where you want to be before you stop drawing more, stop resourcing. And just being able to play Vigilance plus a takedown or Vigilance plus a Fell the Dragon is just so amazing as far as taking over the game. On top of Yoda's flip turn, being able to take a unit out. So, and you're holding strong, you're gaining life. You also get the, Red Squadron to help you draw cards early. You could also consider Colossus for this. I think is probably not a bad idea. Just to have that additional 5 HP for decks that get off to super fast starts, and you are drawing a lot of cards again, so I would probably switch that out to Colossus. I did this real briefly before making this video, so I think I would change it to Colossus, but very similar. Same thing for this one, Luke Blue. I do think that this one is interesting because of the shields. You're playing a lot of the same cards as the last 2 decks. Again, I would probably play Colossus. But yeah, the shields are really interesting, especially for Jango. Being able to shield things makes a big difference in those matchups. And again, if you notice, I'm playing 2 redemptions in a lot of these lists. I would even consider putting a second copy in the main board for this one. But I do think that that's really a really, really strong Sentinel now. it was already strong, but being able to gain life or just be a 6/9 Sentinel in space is awesome with this set, and being able to put a shield on it is even better. So being able to gain life quickly with vigilance at 4 cost and put shields on things can really make a difference in a Jango meta. So I think this is one that I need to test around more, but I like the idea of it. That's why I put it on this list, because I think that we might see this deck be played more often. This is one that's been on like my back burner, just kind of sitting there waiting for the right time to be more relevant. I think maybe right now is the time. Yeah, regional governor for the Han matchup, confiscate for all the upgrades, and then you're just drawing cards and gaining life and slowly taking over the game. You have the mill component as well if you need to, and then you just your strong units of removal like Luke and Chewbacca. I don't know, and you're strong removal with Fell the Dragon and Vanquish. So another one that I wanted to mention, of the new Luke leader, this is the one I like the best. This deck has performed really well in testing. Again, gaining that slot of life using Luke's ability to finish things off. Pinging things with Gray Squadron, Red 5. We have good card draw in here. We are using the Hera in here and the Page Tycho to get off to faster starts with those early space units while pinging things and taking things out with Luke. With our fighter units and good removal. Of course, I probably need to adjust the removal a little bit more. I probably would add in another copy of Fell and then probably another copy of Vanquish. Most likely, just to deal with all these Devastators and all the Devastators, really. The green ones and the red ones. I also think Yoda Green with Data Vault gets a boost with like Luke Skywalker, Blue Leader, Chewbacca. It just feels like it got even better, and it's already a very sweet deck. You could also play like a Starhawk version and do like the combo with Endless Legions. I prefer to be a little more well-rounded and try to have good removal with Fell the Dragon, Takedown, and Vanquish mid-game with a lot of Sentinels and early pressure and interaction with a lot of 2-drops and 3-drops, so that I can activate Yoda's ability and keep cycling through my deck and set up You're My Only Hope. So I definitely think that this one has a lot of potential as well as Yoda Blue, and we could really see this have more success just with all the resource effects and the boost in HP. I think it gives it a fighting chance, and then the strong Sentinels in space really do help against a lot of these triple dark raid decks. So okay, this one is kind of like, I definitely think this one is going to be played. As far as like how good it is in this meta, I'm not sure, because the damage is just getting pushed so fast with this first 4 decks I mentioned, with Han disrupting you while pushing damage, with Jango pushing damage really fast with triple dark raid, with Quinlan disrupting your hand, and then even Boba Yellow is pushing damage so fast. Yes, you have life gain in here. Yes, you're able to ramp quickly. But, I mean, Waylay and Commandeer are a thing. No Good To Me Dead's a thing. While they're pushing all that damage with Triple Dark Raid really quickly. From what I've found is that when I've played against the Piett decks, that I just can, before they're able to get out their Devastators and their, giant threats, it's just, I'm too far ahead. So I like this deck, but I've had problems in testing so far, and maybe there'll be a better list that comes out, or somebody who makes a more optimal list that is able to have better matchups against those top 4 decks, especially, and even aggro decks, like all those 4 aggro decks with Kazuda, Sabine, even Poe. Like, they can just push damage so fast. Even Wedge, if they don't have the right piece of removal, like if they don't hit the Merciless Contest or the Power of the Dark Sides, like, and they have a 6/7 space unit out there, like, what are you gonna do? Or a Chewbacca, they can't remove it. They have a Chewbacca on turn 2, like, they have to deal with the space unit. So it's just one of those decks I wanted to mention, because I do think it has the potential to be very, very strong. And like I said, maybe there's a more optimal list or a way to play this that's a little better. I like the red version as well too, but I have the same problem. Like, I just get run over sometimes. Like, sometimes I can just have amazing starts and blow them out of the water with a Devastator when I'm at 6 resources, which is insane. kind of like the triple dark raids, 6 resource turn. But then there's times where I just get run over and I just cannot recover if I don't find the right piece of removal at the right time. The relief runner is really cool. But yeah, I just wanted to mention this one. This is a really fun deck to play though, especially when you're able to get things going in the right direction. But I found that ground heavy decks too really just run this over if I don't have the right piece of removal, because we're just playing the Pike Sentinel because we want to play the ramp and the space units and the capital ships, but then we're like really susceptible to getting run over on the ground. So definitely would love to hear other people's take on this deck, blue or red. I put blue on here because of the life gain and having the ability to kind of slow things down with top target and vigilance. I did have to add the vigilance because I'm testing. I was just getting run over by aggro when I didn't have vigilance in there. So that has helped a little bit. And the relief runners helped. Top target just feels absolutely necessary. But yeah, I'd love to hear what other people are doing and what's working for them for both this version and the red version. And then Grand Admiral Thrawn, I think, is one of those leaders that has some really, really cool things it can do. And I think if we get to a place that there's a more optimal list, that this deck could really do some good things. But I just wanted to mention it because I love playing like the Count Dooku Mahdi play where you could just like double attack. Again, we're using like some of the indirect damage plays with like Vader on the bomber. Desperate Commando is really sweet to be able to attack into something and then give it -2/2. So it's a good piece of removal, or to vice versa, to -2/2 something that's already been damaged with our indirect damage. So that's been a really cool addition in here. The series officer and the droid missile platform, when they die, can really help us close out games. We're using the tie dagger again to finish things off with that synergy. Chimera is really sweet in here. But yeah, I'd love to hear what other people are doing for this one as well. I think this is one that's kind of on the outskirts of decks that could be potentially very competitive. One thing I would probably change is finding a way to get Devastator in the main board. Maybe that needs to be in here. I don't know. The problem what I have with this one again is like just getting run over. So that's why it's not in the main board. But the Tarkintown has helped. The pinging of damage has helped with the use of Tarkintown to slow things down and have a better chance early. So it's a very fun deck to play though. And then Asajj Tarkintown is another one I wanted to mention because this one you're definitely able to maximize your ability to use your Tarkintown with playing your just playing a unit and dealing damage to things. Again, we're doing a lot of the similar stuff from the last list. Similar cards in here. Indirect damage using Tarkintown, using Asajj's ability. Asajj can really, when it gets out there as a pilot, it can really just close out games quickly. We do have the Devastator in the main board here, using some great units as well with the Hylobon and the Interceptor Ace and the Devastating Gunship, which is really cool. This is just a fun deck to play as well. But I think it has, in the right setting, this is another one that could be really, really good. And as we continue to get more optimal lists, as we see people have more success in different areas with different things. So another one I thought I would mention though, because it's just a lot of fun to play. But yeah, those are the top decks for me at the moment. Let me know if I left any off of here that you think should be mentioned. But I kind of wanted to just this is obviously early on before any big tournaments have happened in the new set, but there's some really cool stuff from this set, and I'm interested to see which ones I'm right about and which ones maybe I underestimated or maybe I overestimated. But there's some really cool things. I would really like to see this deck start being more relevant with the shields. That'd be cool to see. In the green version too, I think that's another one that could potentially have some more success. We saw it have success early on, I think in set 1, and then it kind of just fell off. Yoda Blue, definitely cool. Yoda's flip turn is so awesome. This one I think could be really good. Again, hand disruption plus the life gain plus the really powerful flip turn, just blowing things out of the water depending on how much damage you have on your base. Yeah, Bossk, like I said, I'm not sure where that one's going to be. Love to hear people's different takes on that deck and what they think it needs, or if they think it even has a chance right now with all these triple dark raid devastators. and indirect damage. Qira, I think, could still be good. And maybe it even needs to have more indirect damage in here. Maybe that's something that this deck needs. Maybe it needs TIE Bomber. Qira Red is possibly, yeah. Qira Red is definitely a deck that you might need to look at more, actually, now that I think about it, because of what I've been doing with all these other blue red villainy decks, and adding in the TIE Bomber and the Vader and things like that, has been really fun and really good. So maybe Qira needs to explore that more, especially because of the shield ability that it has as well. So that's a deck I need to revisit. I haven't revisited that one, I think, since the end of set 2. So the Vader Tarkintown one is really sweet. So much fun. Same with this one. These are, if you haven't tried either one of these out, especially this one, because this is a deck that's been around for a long time, but it's just only recently we saw this Tarkintown version have success, and then all this indirect damage that you're getting. It's just you can really close out the game fast, or just really play amazing defense with Vader, because essentially like what Vader's doing is like finishing off everything that's been indirect damage that your opponent doesn't want to take. So it it puts them in some really odd math situations. Cad Bane, another one you're going to see a lot of, and then we get into the aggro decks again. But all these lists will be below in the description. Definitely let me know how you think things are going to shape out, and if I left any decks off of this list that you think should be on here. Um, you know, I'm not right about everything, that's for sure. But as always, y'all have a good one, and peace out.